face the clerk, raise your right hand.
The evidence you shall give the court and the jury the trial of this issue should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
So let me go.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Judge Suggs.
Good afternoon. Could you please introduce yourself to the jury, spelling your first and last name?
Sure. My name is Sean Wilkins, S-H-A-W-N. My last name is Wilkins, W-I-L-K-I-N-S.
And what is your city and state of residence, sir? Where do you live now?
Currently, I live in Uxbridge, Massachusetts.
Did you travel down here for this trial?
I did, yes.
Okay. And where are you from originally?
I am from Uxbridge, Massachusetts originally.
Okay, so you've gone home.
Yes, sir.
Okay. What do you do for a living these days, sir?
I'm currently employed as a public safety officer for Bryant University.
Okay. And is that in Massachusetts?
That is in the state of Rhode Island.
Okay, got it. Were you previously a police department with the Chatham County Police Department? Or a police officer with the Chatham County Police Department?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and what were the years that you were with the Chatham County Police?
If I recall correctly, I started in March of 2021 and ended in July of 2023.
So you've since left the department and moved back to your hometown?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Okay. During your time with the Chatham County Police Department, what assignments or positions did you hold, in order if you can remember?
Yes, so I started off as a patrolman, graduating the academy. After about a year of service, I applied to the CID, the Detective Division, and I was granted the position, I believe, in late September of 2022, and then I went back to patrol in February of 2023, where I remained until I left.
Now, you said the Detectives Division has an acronym CID. What does that stand for?
Criminal Investigations Division.
Okay. So you mentioned you got to CID as a detective in, I think, September of 2022?
Yes, sir.
So as of October of 2022, were you working for the Chatham County Police Department as a detective?
Yes, sir, I was.
And did you, on the morning of October 5th, 2022, respond to a missing child call at 535 Buckhalter Road?
Yes, I did.
And when you got there, did you conduct an interview with the defendant, Leilani Simon?
Yes, I did.
And do you see her sitting in the courtroom today?
That I do, yes, sir.
Can you identify her by an article of clothing or where she's sitting, please?
She is currently in the table to the right of you, sitting down with the glasses on right there.
Witnesses identify the defendant. Now, were you first on the scene for the detectives?
I was, yes, sir.
Okay, so you were the first detective to arrive there.
That is correct, yes.
Bunch of other police officers, but you're the first detective.
Yes.
And when you got there, what was the first thing you did? Did you walk right up to her and start talking to her, or did you get some background, or what?
No, I did not. At first, when I arrived on scene, I believe I was briefed by Lieutenant Foster, just giving a short synopsis of what the call was about. And then I would say approximately 5 minutes after that is when I engaged in a conversation with the defendant.
Now I'm displaying on the screen a slide from State's Exhibit 3, and I think it is slide 12, although the number's kind of difficult to make out. Do you see yourself in that picture?
Yes, that is me.
That's you wearing the dark colored jacket?
Yes, sir.
And is that Lieutenant Foster? to your left in real life, but to the right in the photograph?
Yes, sir, that does appear to be Lieutenant Foster.
Now, would this image reflect the approximate time of your arrival at the scene and getting briefed by Lieutenant Foster?
Yes, sir, that is what appears to be happening, yes.
All right, so going off of the timestamp, what time would that have been?
The timestamp reflects 10:44 a.m.
Does that sound right to you?
That does, yes.
Okay. And you said it was only maybe 5 minutes after this that you spoke to the defendant.
I would say so, yes, sir.
And where was it that you talked to her?
If I do recall correctly, I had gone through the back gate to where the defendant was at the time.
Are you referring to the swimming pool area, patio area in the back?
Roughly.
Okay. Who was out there at the time?
I would say the defendant, her brother, Mr. Paul, and her fiance, Mr. Daniel.
Okay. Did you separate the three of them to conduct your interviews?
I did, yes, sir.
Okay. And did you ultimately end up talking to all three of them on the scene?
Ultimately, yes. I did at one point or another speak to all three, yes.
Okay. Well, I want to ask you specifically about your interview with the defendant, okay?
Yes, sir.
Did you ask her when the last time she had seen her child was?
That I did, yes, sir.
And what did she say to that?
If I recall correctly, the defendant explained that she had gone to bed at approximately midnight that evening, and yes, that is approximately midnight that evening.
And was she putting that out there as the last time she had seen her child, Quinton, I should say, the missing child, sometime before she went to bed at midnight?
Yes, sir. When I had asked that question, I believe I did ask if she remembers putting Quinton down at that time, yes.
Okay. And did she tell you when she had woken up in the morning?
I believe she explained that she woke up at 9 a.m. that next morning.
So in this initial interview with you, the first detective on scene, she's putting herself in bed around midnight. Last time she saw Quinton was before that, and has herself waking up at 9 a.m.
Yes, sir. That is correct.
Was your interview with the defendant audio recorded?
Yes, I did use an audio recording device for our interview on scene.
Did you have a body-worn camera at that time?
I do not believe I did at that time, no.
And is that because detectives didn't have body-worn cameras at that point?
Not normally. We did not wear body-worn cameras normally in our uniform.
Okay. Do you see in front of you a disc marked as State's Exhibit 5?
That I do, that is correct.
Okay. And do you know what's on that disc?
I believe it is that audio recording from that morning with the defendant.
And have you listened to the contents of that disc, at least in part, to verify that that's what it is?
Yes, sir, I have.
Okay. And does that recording fairly and accurately depict your interview with her at the scene?
Yes.
Your Honor, I would move this into evidence as State's Exhibit 5.
No objection, Your Honor.
State's Exhibit 5 is admitted.
And Your Honor, at this point, I'll publish a brief portion from the beginning of this recording. I'm going to start at the very beginning of the recording, and I'll state for the record when I stop the playback.
Oh, I think it was me.
So when's the last time you saw your child?
When I went to bed last night.
And what time was that?
It
Do you
was
remember?
around 12.
12?
Around 12 when I went to bed. I had my wisdom teeth removed yesterday.
I'm sorry, that sucks.
So I went to bed kind of late.
I get you. Listen, I had them up too.
So and then I got up this morning about 9.
About 9?
And my front door is open. So I went up and I shut it, not thinking about anything like that. And I look over and check on my kids and he was gone. All the rest were there. He was
It's
gone.
alright. It's alright. It's alright. Take some deep breaths.
And that was actually a 34-second clip that I cut out of the larger file that was admitted, and I'll make it clear for the court reporter and the clerk at some point on a break what portion of the larger file was actually played.
Thank you. Any issues with that?
No issues, Judge.
Okay, thank you.
Now, did you go to headquarters that day for follow-on interviews with, involving the defendant, Daniel Youngkin and Paul Simon?
Yes, I did. That is correct.
And were you paired up with an FBI agent to participate in these interviews?
I was, yes.
And do you remember who you were paired up with?
I do have my report here, if I could look at that just to remember the name.
Sure, if that would refresh your memory.
Yes, I was paired up with FBI Special Agent Taylor Burns.
And who did you all interview of the three?
The defendant's brother, Paul.
Okay. Now, sometime over the coming days, were you asked to submit a request to Verizon for phone records associated with a phone number for a Henry Bubba Moss Jr.?
Yes, I was.
And did you do that?
Yes.
How did you do that?
There's a paper form that we were sent by the cell phone carrier in which I fill out the identifying information, such as the name that the number is registered to, the actual phone number, and I believe a time frame in which the records that we are requesting are needed.
And did you submit that request to Verizon?
Yes, I did.
And did they produce responsive records to you in response to that request?
Yes, sir, they did.
How do they give those to you? Do they mail them to you in the mail or email them or what?
I believe it was an email, sir.
Okay. And when you got those records, did you forward those to the lead investigator, Marion Lemons, who's here in court with us?
I did, yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much. One moment, please, Your Honor. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Mr. Hilliard?
Just a few. Mr. Wilkins, how long have you been in law enforcement?
I was employed as a police dispatcher in Holliston, Massachusetts for approximately 3 years. After that, in 2021, is when I was employed with the Chatham County Police Department for about 2.5 years.
So from like 2018 to 2021, you're a police dispatcher. I guess you moved down here and were
Patrolman at that time.
patrolman at Chatham County.
Yes, and then transitioned into detective role in September of 2022.
And you were a detective from September and then went back to patrol in February?
That is correct, yes.
I was just curious. That's kind of a short time. Why?
I just didn't feel fulfilled, I guess, at in the detective unit.
So, and then when did you move back to Massachusetts?
So I left the detective unit in February of 2023 and was on patrol, and then I would say in July of 2023 is when I moved back to Massachusetts.
All right. So you've been up there about 15 months, a little bit more at this point in time.
I think that's fairly accurate.
You said you had a conversation with Ms. Simon at the patio area, and I believe Mr. Simon was there, Paul Simon was there, and was anyone else present?
I believe the defendant's fiance at the time, Daniel, was there. I don't remember how close in proximity he was, though.
Any children there?
What was that? I'm sorry.
Any children there?
I can't recall.
Okay. How about any other adults?
There were a few adults. I think I talked to them sparingly after the interviews with the three, but I can't recall their relation to the defendant off the top of my head.
And how long were you on the scene that day? We're talking October 5th, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. How long were you actually on scene that day at 535 Buckhalter Road?
From my arrival at 10:44 in the morning, I believe we didn't leave, if memory serves me correctly, maybe 5 or 6 p.m. Again, that's a ballpark estimate, though.
So at least 7 or 8 hours, though.
Roughly, yes, sir.
And when you did leave, my understanding is, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, just trying to make sure I understand, but when you did leave 7 or 8 hours later, it was to go to the police station and conduct interviews, correct?
Yes, sir.
Right. So it wasn't like you just went home, you were there for 7 or 8 hours, and then you went and did an interview, correct?
No, sir. There was no downtime between leaving the scene and going to the station.
And that's kind of what I was getting to. Now, while you were on the scene for those 7 or 8 hours, was it an increasing number of people that were arriving on the scene?
I would say more resources had arrived on scene in an attempt to find Quinton at that time, yes.
So the number of people kept going up during that 7 or 8 hour period?
Yes, sir.
And to the best of your knowledge, was this all of your involvement in the case, to the best of your recollection?
Outside of my initial on-scene interview with the defendant and the interview with Paul Simon and what Mr. Dean had asked me of the cell phone records, in terms of major involvement, yes. After that, I was moved to more of a supportive role, where I was just there to help as a body, mostly.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this. On the day that you were there on October 5th, did you conduct any of the searches on the house or anything like that while you were there?
Not any of the in-depth searches to my recollection. It was the interviews, conversations with the other detectives that had arrived on scene, and then the interviews shortly after.
That's all the questions I got. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Dean?
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right. May this witness be excused.
You may.
Yes, Your Honor.
You may step down. Thank you.
Thank you.
The state may call its next witness.
Kiana Robbins.
The evidence you shall give the court and jury in the trial of this issue shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Yes.
Step this way, ma'am.
All right. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Could you please introduce yourself to the jury, spelling your first and last name?
It's Kiana, Keina, Robbins, Robbins,
And where do you work?
with Chatham County Police Department.
What is your position there?
Currently a detective.
How long have you been with the Chatham County Police Department?
6 years.
And did you work with any other police departments prior to starting with the Chatham County Police Department?
No, sir.
What assignments have you had at the Chatham County Police Department before becoming a detective?
I was on patrol for 3 years.
Okay. So that would put you joining the detectives roughly
January
when?
of 2022.
January of 2022.
Yes, sir.
Now, were you on duty as a detective on the morning of October 5th, 2022?
Yes.
Where were you and what were you doing?
I was at the Islands Precinct, located at 54 Johnny Mercer Boulevard, in our detective's office at my desk.
Now, is that a ways away from 535 Buckhalter Road?
Yes, it's about 30 minutes, give or take. 45.
Is that where your office is located?
Yes.
The Islands Precinct?
Yes, sir.
Is that where all the detectives' offices are located for the department, or are y'all spread out?
That's our main office. We don't have any other offices at any other precincts.
Okay, so the CID offices, if I'm understanding you correctly, are in the Islands Precinct on Johnny Mercer?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, did you become involved at some point that day in the investigation of the disappearance of Quinton Simon?
Yes, sir.
Did you go to the scene yourself that day, 535 Buckhalter?
Yes, sir.
When roughly did you go there?
Around 6 o'clock, I believe, that evening, after getting a search warrant signed.
Okay, so you didn't go there till the evening, till after a search warrant was signed for the residence?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, earlier, before that, were you nevertheless still involved from your desk at the Islands Precinct?
Yes, sir.
And at some point, were you asked, or did you just decide to run the defendant's name, Leilani Simon, and see whether there were any vehicles registered to her that you could see in your system?
I was asked by the detectives on scene.
Okay. And how did they ask you? Over the radio, cell phone, or what?
Through text.
Okay. So who was on the scene at that point that may have asked you to do that, if you remember?
I believe it was Detective Noble and Detective Wilkins.
Okay. So one or both of them asked you to run her name and see about vehicle registrations.
Yes, sir.
And did you see that any particular vehicle was registered to her?
I believe that there was a Dodge Journey registered to her.
Do you remember the tag number for the Dodge Journey?
Yes, it was TEN 9300.
And is that a Georgia tag?
Yes, sir.
One moment. Now, do you see in front of you a document marked as State's Exhibit 6?
Yes, sir.
Do you know what that is?
It appears to be a license plate reader from Flock.
Okay, a flock camera?
Yes, sir.
All right. Does it fairly and accurately depict what a typical flock camera looks like?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, I would move this in as State's Exhibit 6.
No objection, Judge, I've already seen it.
It's admitted.
And may I ask, rather than putting this up on the screen, if it could just be published by passing it to the jury?
That's fine, Judge.
And would the court like for me to do that, or would the court prefer that a deputy do that?
What does the state wish to do?
I'm fine.
Are these photos?
It's just a single photograph.
It's just one picture, Judge.
Okay. So,
Thank you. Now, what is a flock camera and what is the flock system?
So essentially, it's a license plate reader that is stationed throughout different areas throughout the U.S. The Flock system is made only public to law enforcement agencies, so you have to have a username and a password through your agency to actually use the system.
And did you have that on October 5th of 2022?
Yes, sir.
Roughly how many of these cameras are there scattered around Chatham County? Off the top of your head, I'm not looking for a firm number.
About 300.
Okay. And do you have access to the information from all of those?
Yes.
Do you have access to information from flock cameras in other places?
Yes, sir.
How does that work?
So essentially what it is the agency, say if we're here in Georgia, an agency in California can put us on their permissions list, and then what we can do is just add it or do what we call a hot list, which means say if there's a vehicle that you're looking for, if you have the tag, you can put it in the system and then it'll alert those individuals who are on the hot list. So I would have to say if I'm the owner of the hot list, I can add you as a user to see what the vehicle and where it hits at.
Now, what do these cameras do when a car drives by and the license plate comes into the field of view of the camera?
It just takes a picture of the license plate and the back of the vehicle.
Okay. And are those images maintained in the flock database that you have access to?
Yes, I think they hold for about 30 days.
Okay.
Office, and then I laterally transferred to the original Chatham County Police Department, and then we merged with the City of Savannah Police Department, which became the Savannah-Chatham Metropolitan Police Department. And then in 2017, we had demerged, and I went back with the Chatham County Police Department.
Now, I don't necessarily want to ask you about every assignment that you held during your career as a police officer.
Yes, sir.
I'm guessing it's probably a lot of different things, correct?
Luckily, I was able to do various things.
Did you have, I guess, any experience as a detective specifically?
Yes, sir. For over 7 years, I was in detectives, and I was I was in auto vehicle theft, and then I went to violent crimes. I was in robbery, homicide, and during those 7 years, and I was also, for a short period of time, in an undercover unit.
Okay. And was that with the Savannah Chatham Metropolitan Police Department? That
Yes,
did
sir.
Violent crimes?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Dealing with robberies and homicides?
Yes, sir.
All right. So you've been a detective before and did it for quite a while?
Yes, sir.
All right. On October 5, 2022, were you working?
Yes, sir, I was.
And what was your position and assignment at that point?
I was the West Side Watch Commander for the Chatham County Police Department.
And who was your immediate subordinate in that role?
At that time, it was Sergeant Bobby Stewart.
Okay, so it goes Sergeant Stewart, and then next up the chain of command is you, Lieutenant Foster.
Yes, sir.
All right. Did you, at some point that morning, respond to 535 Buckhalter in response to a missing child call?
Yes, sir.
Now, you were not the first on scene, were you?
No, I was not.
Who else was there at the time that you got there? And I'm not asking for names, but just broadly speaking, who was there, what was going on?
The initial officer was there, which again, I'm not sure which one it was. I'd have to go back and look. But Sergeant Stewart was already on scene, and when I got there, he started briefing me on what he had already initially found out.
Okay. So you show up and you get briefed by Sergeant Stewart. At that point, do you become the senior man on scene, the on-scene commander?
At that time, yes, sir.
Okay. And did you... The story that was given initially was that the defendant had woken up at around 9 and the front door was open, right?
That was what I was initially told, yes, sir.
Did you take a look at that door?
I did.
Can you tell us what you remember about that door, if anything?
I remember actually checking the function of the door and actually opening it and closing it, and I realized that it wasn't something that was easily opened, and it wasn't necessarily a door that was quiet per se. When it opened, it made noises.
Are you describing like kind of a sticky door that you have to pull hard to open?
It required a little bit of...
Push hard to open, whatever the case may be?
Yes, sir. It required a little bit of force.
Did you have any contact with Detective Kiana Robbins? Well, not necessarily at the scene, but while you were at the scene, did you have some form of contact with her?
Yes, sir. If I remember correctly, I got a phone call from her. And while I was trying to assess everything and trying to allocate resources to potentially figure out what happened, I got a call, at which time she told me that the defendant's vehicle was seen on the flock camera the night before, going down Ageechee Road and then coming back down Ageechee Road.
Now, did you do anything with that information once you had it?
Yes. Once I found that out, because I think when Sergeant Stewart briefly told me they had said that they had went to bed at a certain time the night before, I went back to her because then just kind of got a little feeling. So I went back and I asked her. I said, at any point did you ever leave the house for any reason? And then she told me no twice. She said, no, never left. I said, okay. I said, could maybe you went somewhere and the thing? She said, no. So once she told me no, that kind of threw up another flag for me. I became concerned about that. And I remember talking to her in the backyard or back porch area. And I asked her, I said, could anyone, you sure you didn't leave the house? And then she said, oh, wait, I do remember I went up, I don't recall the address. It's the convenience store right in front of 4711 Ageechee Road, which is the Azalea Mobile Home Park. She had said that she went up there to get some Orajel. And she said that she went up there and then she tried to show me her phone. And she said, matter of fact, I went up there at such and such time, and it's in my report, and I came back. And I was back home at about 1:25. And the odd thing, because I remember asking her, could anybody have possibly followed you home or anything like that when you left? Because, I mean, you're claiming that somebody came and took your child. Could somebody have possibly, maybe your ex-husband, somebody? She said, no, and that's when she told me about the Orajel. The concerning part about that to me was I've worked that area close to 27 years. That convenience store has never been open past midnight.
Now, did you as a lieutenant have a body-worn camera on that day?
No, sir. It wasn't required not by our policy for me to have one.
And is that because, I guess as a lieutenant, you're not typically the one out there making first contact with a complainant or a suspect? So you just don't need it like a patrol officer does?
Correct. I'm usually after the fact.
Okay. But in any case, this last conversation that you're referring to, wherein she gave you the Oragel, the Chevron Oragel story or the convenience store Oragel story, was that captured on somebody's body-worn camera?
I believe on one of my officers' body cams, yes, sir.
Do you see in front of you a disc marked as State's Exhibit 8?
I do.
All right. Do you know what is on this disc?
This is the body-worn camera video of, if I remember correctly, APO Gormley.
Okay. And does that particular excerpt that's on that disc capture the exchange that you just described? The asking her again, hey, are you sure you didn't go anywhere last night? And her telling you about this trip and giving you the story about what it was for. Is that what's on there?
It is, because I think APO Gormley was back there with the family when I came up. He was already back there. And I had asked her, I said, in any way did you ever leave the home the night before at any time and where somebody could have followed you back home and possibly come and took your child? And she said no. And then that's when she came and advised me of the incident to go get Oragel, and that's when she showed me her phone, tried to show me her phone where the track of her phone, where she went, and she even told me exactly what time she came back home, and she was looking at her phone, and she told me 1:25 a.m. I was like, okay.
Now, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No.
When you had this exchange, whether it was captured on Gormley's body cam, this was on the patio in the back pool area?
Yes, sir. It was actually on the back patio, back porch area right next to the pool.
And was it the defendant was obviously there because she's the one that you're talking to, right?
Yes, sir.
Was her boyfriend or fiance Daniel Youngkin there?
He was, and I believe so was her other children were there.
And what about her brother, Paul Simon? Was he there?
There was a family member. I don't know exactly what his name because I don't remember talking to him. So if that was his name, it may have been. But I do remember there was another male family member there.
And what was Gormley doing? I mean, you've mentioned that this was caught on his body cam. What was he doing back there with the three of them?
He was standing with them because I believe at that point I had already instructed the officers to research the house again, looking for Quinton, just to make sure that maybe he wasn't hiding anywhere or anything of that nature for this type of cases, just to double check.
Okay. And for that, at this point, did you want these three people out of the house so the scene would be secure?
Basically, I had everybody who was in the house that was there out just to have the officers go and look for the child.
Okay. And Gormley's back there just kind of keeping an eye on the three of them?
Correct.
Okay. Your Honor, I don't know whether I've done it yet, but I would introduce this into evidence as State's Exhibit 8.
Mr. Hilliard?
What is it, Judge? I guess it's the Gormley's body cam?
Yes.
No objection, Judge.
Okay, it's admitted.
May I now publish this, Your Honor? tell us now that we've got this up, can you tell us to the minute what time this exchange was at?
12:12 in the afternoon on the 5th of October.
Thank you.
10 patients for sale. Did y'all go anywhere last night or yesterday with baby? That maybe he could have followed you or something to that effect? Y'all didn't go anywhere?
Not even with my kids, no.
No, I mean just maybe you yourself.
Yeah, I know, because I got my tooth pulled yesterday, so about 2 maybe, I went to get some Oregon, that was it.
2 o'clock yesterday afternoon?
No, like morning, wise, because I couldn't go to sleep.
Okay, so where'd you go?
Right up the road right here, got Chevron. And I met my friend that I used to work with, and she got Oregon because they didn't have any extra okay when I called.
Okay. Did you go anywhere else that we maybe been followed? So when did you get home?
I can tell you exactly the time I got back, actually.
Yeah, we have,
360. Was it even 2? I was talking about 125.
At 1:25?
So I was gone for literally 12 minutes.
And you went where?
Right up the road to next to that Chevron.
Oh, the 40 over here on right here on the
Right up the road, because I used to work at Bojangles, so I had a girl named Misty that
I gotta borrow her for the canine.
Okay, give me just a second.
Yeah.
I had there's a girl named Misty that I used to work with who had dental problems as well, so I got in contact with her and asked her if she had Oreo, because when I called several kids, they didn't have any.
Okay, did you notice anybody following you or anything?
I don't know.
Did you go back out at all any time at the time?
When I did get back, there was a car, which is why that lady mentioned it, whatever. I was thinking that maybe the car was for people across the street, but it was another little gray car sitting out front of the house.
Okay.
So I was thinking it was for across the street from the neighbors, so I don't know.
So you said you got home about 1:30?
Yes, it's 1:25 a.m. is the exact time that I got home. I was gone for almost 12 minutes.
Okay, all right. Nobody followed me, right?
No.
Yeah, Paul.
They're just gonna ask you about.
You mentioned earlier, and I want to make sure I heard you right, that there were, but before she told you about this trip at one, whatever it was, that she had given a time that she went to sleep, and she had given a time that she had woken up. And I think you said that she had twice told you that she didn't leave the house, didn't go anywhere during that time window. Is that right?
That's correct.
Not once, but twice?
Correct.
Now, are those statements captured in this exchange, or are you talking about some other statement she made to you earlier, not captured on camera?
There was another, and I believe when I first got there, I asked them what happened. And I believe that's the first time when she told me what time they went to sleep. But then on this time, I asked again after I had gotten a phone call from Detective Robbins, where they told me that her vehicle was seen on the flock camera system. That's when I went back to her and said, did you ever leave the house? And as soon as I approached her with it, the first thing she said was no. And then next thing you know, she said it. She shook her head again, and then she said, "Oh, wait a minute, the origin." Okay.
Now, I want to move forward in time, long after October 5th, but into later in the eventual landfill search that was a part of this investigation. Now, were you a part of the landfill search?
From the very beginning.
And what was your role or roles, I guess?
I had multiple roles. We were there to set up the initial site to start the search of the trash that was there. I was there prior to us starting the search. We were there getting equipment. Logistically speaking, I was there to make sure the equipment was there, resources, fueling the vehicles, making sure water was up there, bringing food. I mean, I was kind of a jack of all trades on that.
Were you involved in ensuring that there was enough PPE for all the searchers?
Yes, sir. I was part of that along with another individual from the department. We ended up setting up all the PPE in order to make sure everybody was safe while they were going through this potentially biohazardous material and trash.
I'm sorry. And were you there for every day of the landfill search?
I was there every day.
Okay. What were the hours of the landfill search on any given day?
We would, honestly, we literally, myself and another lieutenant showed up prior to everybody showing up. We were there at 5 o'clock in the morning, and we did not leave easily until 5 in the afternoon, 5:30 in the afternoon. And the only time I actually left is when we had a uniform security, a uniformed police officer coming to do security of the landfill site after hours.
Tell me about the after-hours security plan at the landfill.
We usually traditionally broke down about 4:30, 5 o'clock to clean everybody up, decontaminate everybody. And then once all the searchers were bussed out, I was the last person there waiting for the relief uniformed officer to come there and sit on the site. That way we had security there at the site 24/7. Somebody from the police department had eyes on that site 24/7 from the time that we started to the time that we ended.
And are you talking about the entrance to the landfill on Little Neck Road, or are you talking about inside the landfill at the search area specifically, or both?
But there was security at the entrance of the landfill, but that was done by the city of Savannah because that was their area. The actual site where the volunteers and the people who were assigned to the search was actually done by Chatham County Police personnel.
Okay. Was the area kept well lit at night?
Yes, sir. We actually had floodlights that came on. The officers were instructed to turn them on when it got dark. Sometimes when we were still there, I would have them turned on before the officer even got there.
And what was the point of all this?
So we could have visibility of the area at all times. That way there would be no chance, any way, shape, or form, that area could be contaminated by somebody other than the law enforcement searchers who were involved and police personnel. And of course, waste management personnel that were allowed to be there.
Now, did you pull that overnight security duty yourself at any point?
Unfortunately, a few times I had to, yes, sir.
And what did that involve for you?
Basically being in a marked unit, being in a uniform, sitting there, looking at the landing where the trash was brought to, I hate to say it that way, but trash was brought there to be searched, and looking at the site where they were actually pulling from to bring down to the landing. We had all that lit up to where you could actually see the whole thing.
Do you remember, were you present on the day that Quinton's remains were finally found?
Unfortunately, yes, I was.
And what were you doing at the landfill that day? What were your duties on that day?
Again, based off of the logistics part and setting everything up and all that, while we were there and they were searching, we were actually stationed by, and every time something of significance was found, they alerted us, and then they would bring whatever certain items that they found and took it over to the forensic anthropologist to review.
And was that the last day of the landfill search?
Yes, sir.
Overall, how many days would you say that you were out? You may not remember off the top of your head, but roughly how long did this landfill saga last for?
I remember it was it after previous Thanksgiving? I think approximately 4 weeks. It was a very extended search.
Now, we've heard testimony from Sergeant Stewart and maybe to you from some degree that initially, the initial response to the scene on October 5th,
Yes, sir.
that there were search efforts focused in the house and in the areas around the house, the wooded areas, bodies of water, and so forth. Is that a normal protocol, the normal protocol for a missing children's call?
Yes, in the event that we don't immediately find the child. When I was there, I was the incident commander, so we were figuring out what happened from the initial story that we got, just to make sure that we covered all our bases and everything that happened. We initiated a further search pattern out that I had to coordinate, and we started getting volunteers. We contacted SEMA. SEMA got involved. A lot of resources were brought in to try to attempt to locate little Quinton.
Now, when we're talking about young children, the missing child call pertaining to a young children, is it fair to say that the typical situation is the child is just eventually found nearby, either in the house in a closet or something like that, or in the woods 50 yards away?
Luckily, in my experience, very few times have we had a situation where, for an extended period of time, that we lost a child. A lot of times, in situations of children this young, they're usually hiding somewhere. Not to go off tangent here, but I mean, we've actually had one where the child was sleeping under a bunch of blankets, and that's when we ended up finding them 30 minutes later. But they usually are found within the house or within the immediate area of the house relatively soon, luckily. Unfortunately, in this case, it didn't end up being that.
Now, Sergeant Stewart has testified that one of the first things he did when he got there and got an initial statement was simply send a couple officers into the house to look for Quinton. Based on what you've just told us, does that seem to you to have been a sound approach, at least initially?
Yes, sir, because traditionally when a child is lost, usually the parents or family members are hysterical for the simple fact that, I can't find my child. So they tend not to search as well as a reasonable-minded officer would when he comes to the scene and knows what to look for. So yes, that is a normal protocol. Well, let us check the house. Maybe we'll find them. And that's what was initially done.
One moment, please, Your Honor. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Dean. Mr. Hilliard?
Thank you.
Lieutenant Foster, how many people were searching at the landfill over the course of that 5 or 6 week period?
Easily between 20 to 30 a day.
And so let's say how many days? 45 days, let's say. So 20 or 30 a day times 45 days, that's a lot of people, isn't it?
Correct.
Okay. In and out. And that's not counting everybody else who's coming in and out of the landfill in normal routine business, correct?
Correct, but the majority of the searchers were the same.
I don't think I had a question before you. Did I?
Objection, Your Honor. I'm going to ask that the witness be allowed to complete his answer.
I don't believe
There
there was
wasn't
a
a question.
So, Mr. Hilliard, I'm going to ask that you move on.
So Lieutenant Foster, so there was, I'd say, easily hundreds of people in and out of that place during this time frame, correct?
Not hundreds, no.
Not during the course of these several weeks?
Not hundreds, no.
Okay. Thousands in?
No, not thousands.
Okay. So if you had 20 or 30 people a day times 45 days, okay? Is it the same 20 or 30 people every day?
Majority of the days, yes, sir.
Okay. But not every day?
Not every day, no.
Okay. So it was different people?
Sometimes.
Okay. So that being said, this is a dump, correct?
It is a dump.
And you have a number of people coming in conducting normal business, and you have a number of people coming in conducting searching, correct?
Correct.
Is that a fair and accurate statement?
That is fair and accurate.
Okay. And you said a minute ago that you were genuinely, you didn't think that you were trying to protect against contamination at a dump site with all these people in and out of it.
Correct.
Is that genuinely what you just testified to?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Now, that being said, at 535 Buckhalter Road, how many people were there on October 5th?
My entire west side, so we're talking 6 to 7 officers, my sergeant, myself, and then once we really started doing the search, command staff, federal authorities, but as far as going into the house, it's pretty much my officers, myself, and then the investigators that I know of.
So I guess it's a fair number of people that day at least.
Correct.
Okay. So now we just watched this little bit of video right here. You asked a question, but what the question that you asked, because that was you asking the question on that video, correct? That wasn't Officer Gormley.
Absolutely.
Right, so it was Gormley's cam, but it was you asking the question, right?
Yes, sir.
And the question that I heard was, you asked if she went anywhere with the kids, and she said no.
Okay.
Okay, was that the question that you asked?
I asked both. I mean, did you go anywhere? And then I asked, if you watch it again, I asked the second time, did you go anywhere with the kids?
Right.
And she first said she didn't go anywhere, no, was the answer, no. And then I asked if she went anywhere with the kids, she said no.
Right.
And then, if I recall correctly from a few minutes ago, she said that she had to go get some orange gel.
Right. But this was at noon on October 5th, if I'm not correct. Correct?
Yes.
So, now, and I didn't understand because it was a little confusing to me, so correct me if I'm wrong. Mr. Dean then asked you if there was a prior statement to this, or if this was the statement that you were referring to, and I wasn't really sure what your answer was. Is this the statement that you were referring to when you said you had asked her if she'd went somewhere?
Yes, this is.
Okay, so this is the statement. There wasn't some earlier statement. It was this statement, correct?
There was an earlier statement when I initially got there. I, of course, looked around to see where the baby was sleeping and things of that nature. And from what Sergeant Stewart briefed me on, because I asked what
Well,
time.
I'm not asking you what Sergeant Stewart said. I'm asking if it was your question. If you asked the question earlier.
Yes, sir. If you let me finish, I would tell you. Then I spoke with her.
Right.
And spoke with her boyfriend and asked some relatively same questions. Well, what time did y'all go in? When was the last time you saw him?
All right. Well, let me ask you that. You said you asked her boyfriend. So did you ask her boyfriend or did you ask her? Those are two different things.
Both. They were both there together.
Right, but who answered? That's my question.
They both did.
Okay, so the boyfriend answered.
The boyfriend answered and gave me what time he last saw the child, and she also gave me an answer of when she recalled last seeing him.
Okay.
When,
But that was the only other prior statement that you were talking about.
that I am involved with, correct.
Okay. That's all the questions I got. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Does the state have any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Mr. Dean, as to your next witness, the witnesses thus far have been relatively short. Are we still in that vein with the next witness as well?
I think the next witness is going to be, I'm notoriously bad at predicting how long, but I think longer than any of the previous witnesses. So I'll leave that information to the court, and the court can plot the way forward.
Okay. I'd like to take up some housekeeping and timing issues. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to allow you to take a short break. I'm going to ask you to step into the jury room while we talk about scheduling.
Jury's exiting.
Thank you, Deputy Solomon. Everyone, please have a seat. So, we're at 4:40. I know we want to get as much done as we can. I'm concerned that if we start with the next witness, it may take some time. We can either break a little early and attend to any other things that we may need to let the jury go, or we can push through one more